What's a story where the bad guys are actually completely 100% right to the point where it's weird? The story keeps calling them the bad guys. Every single Donald Duck cartoon. Dude usually just wants to chill out without being bothered, and there's always someone bothering him, and then he gets blamed for standing up for his own needs. The older I get, the more I empathize with Donald Duck. Disney understood that back in the day, too. His cartoons were actually more popular than Mickey's, because he was more relatable. When Disney was asked to make a cartoon explaining how income tax helped the war effort during World War II, they chose Donald, because he would be relatable, frustrated with the whole process at first, but learn how it worked. Mrs. Doubtfire, because Pierce Brosnan was really nice, and was a lonely middle-aged man who wanted a family, but Mrs. Doubtfire was so mean to him, and even tried to kill him with pepper, knowing he was allergic. Jack and the Beanstalk. Somebody finds the giant's house and starts taking all his best stuff. Also very weird that magic beans has become shorthand for like bad investment or stupid decision. The magic beans were exactly as advertised and had an amazing ROI for Jack. Peter Pan. The pirates are just grown-up lost boys that he brought to Neverland. They just want to leave and return to their lives. Also, if you read the book, he's been kidnapping Wendy's female ancestors for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Every time the laundry and dirty dishes stack up too high, he goes to Earth and finds a Wendy to come clean up for him, so he never, ever has to clean up for himself. At the end of the novel, he makes a deal with Wendy's parents that she can come to Neverland to take care of him for a few weeks every year, and when she gets too old, he takes her daughter, and then her daughter, and then her daughter. The Wendys never get to go on any of the adventures, of course, just stay back at headquarters and cook and clean for a team of disgusting and poorly behaved boys. Tom the cat. He was trying to rid of a mouse that frequently stole food and trashed the house. Tom was just doing his job as the cat of the house. Jerry used to instigate and taunt him. One time he got Tom punished and he got his head chopped off by the guillotine. This is a wild pull, lol, but High School Musical. I'd be pissed if I worked my ass off for years to get the lead in a musical, only for them to give it to someone else who didn't technically attend the auditions. In High School Musical 2 they were all such brats about having to actually work at the job they got, and not getting to participate in an event at the country club, because they had to work that night. They're not members there, they're staff. Plus the guy was totally right to be mad at Gabriella for leaving a lifeguard shift early, unless there was a replacement who took over. Squidward is not necessarily a bad guy, but as an adult, you feel a lot more for him, and how annoying SpongeBob would be to have as a neighbor co-worker. Yes, but when Squidward moves to paradise, he gets extremely bored and ends up missing SpongeBob every parent when the children move away. The McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit. Lady. From Wikipedia. The plaintiff, Stella Liebeck, 1912 to 2004, a 79-year-old woman, suffered third-degree burns in her pelvic region when she accidentally spilled coffee in her lap after purchasing it from a McDonald's restaurant. She was hospitalized for 8 days while undergoing skin grafting, followed by 2 years of medical treatment. Liebeck sought to settle with McDonald's for $20,000 to cover her medical expenses. When McDonald's refused, Liebeck's attorney filed suit in the U.S. District Court for the District of New Mexico, accusing McDonald's of gross negligence. Liebeck's attorneys argued that, at 180-190 degrees Fahrenheit, 82-88 degrees Celsius, McDonald's coffee was defective and more likely to cause serious injury than coffee served at any other establishment. The jury found that McDonald's was 80% responsible for the incident. They awarded Liebeck a net $160,000 in compensatory damages to cover medical expenses and $2.7 million, equivalent to $5 million in 2021, in punitive damages, the equivalent of 2 days of McDonald's coffee sales. The trial judge reduced the punitive damages to 3 times the amount of the compensatory damages, totaling $640,000. The parties settled for a confidential amount before an appeal was decided. Any rom-com where the main character cheats on their partner with a new love interest that they end up with. I was reading a Christmas Hallmark movie story from the other side, where two Wall Street people who are working hard staying up nights to save up money for future marriage and kids realize their partners went away to a small town and cheated on them with a charming local on a whim on Christmas Day. So they ditch their partners and form a power couple and buy a penthouse in New York and get their happy ending. Katherine Heigl's character in Knocked Up. When I watched it as a teenager, I thought she was a frigid bitch who needed to lighten up and let Seth Rogen's character have fun. Now, as an adult in my 30s, I'm like, wow, that dude did not have his shit together. I get why she was stressed out. Edit. Please stop with the actually comments. I don't care. Iceman in Top Gun. I used to work in naval aviation and he was totally right. Maverick was dangerous and unreliable. Edit. I really wasn't expecting this comment to blow up. I fully understand the meaning of bad guy, but in this instance, I took it to mean anything from antagonist, villain, foil, or adversary, but this is Reddit and people are super pedantic and literal. My role was as a naval flight surgeon, so besides being my squadron's doctor, I flew in the back seat with them, sat on mishap investigation boards, like the one depicted in the movie, and generally helped determine fitness for flight duty. Maverick wouldn't have lasted long with the antics he pulled and his personality eye roll, but where is the fun and drama in that? That weird episode of Friends, where Phoebe is convinced her dead mother is reincarnated as a cat, so she tries to steal it from its owners, and Ross is presented as the bad guy for pointing out how ridiculous this is. I read that this plot was actually suggested by one of the main writers, who had recently lost their own parent. Nobody wanted to point out that it was stupid, because they didn't want to seem insensitive, so they all just went with it. To be fair, it was definitely not out of character for Phoebe. Red Foreman was right. Eric and his friends were all dumbasses that need a boot in the ass. I agree, but he looked over Laurie misdeeds too much. Most heist movies. Oh, he's doing it to afford medicine for his sick child. Okay, but he just killed 14 security guards, none of whom will be going home to their families now. Lol. In Once Upon a Time, Snow White's character is like wrecking henchmen, and on random nobody guard types W her bow and arrow, definitely killing people. Then she gets to the most evil character at the time, the literal evil queen, and reason for all the bad shit going on. What does Snow White do? Decides now that she won't stop to the queen's level, and she will choose Mercy Mayo. Any documentary about card counting, told from the casino's perspective. Card counters are made to be the bad guys in these documentaries even though we really aren't doing anything wrong. Casinos are inherently morally corrupt and terrible for communities. They use several tactics to make it impossible for the average person to realize how much money they are actually spending. And card counting isn't even cheating. It's not like how the movies make it out to be. Real card counting is simply looking at the cards as they come out of the shoe. There's no trick. It's just looking at the cards and using a memorization system to keep track of everything. For an apt comparison, imagine being banned from chess tournaments for using your head too much. That's what card counters get banned for. Thinking too hard. And casinos make us out to be the bad guy for being above average at one casino game. Insane how we are the bad guys, when in reality, they make hundreds of thousands by getting patrons drunk enough to the point that they blow all their savings. F casinos. Police Academy. They let a bunch of violent, unstable, dishonest deadbeats into the police force, and the chief of police was supposed to be okay with that. He was doing the public a favor by trying to weed out the worst ones. It's a different take. But Mahoney didn't even want to be there in the first place, but I think it was court ordered or something. In fact, most of them were misfits, and probably never ever should have worn a uniform. Peter Rabbit. He was a thief, a glutton, a trespasser, a burglar, a naughty little rabbit. Meanwhile, Mr. McGregor only wanted to produce something of value and feed his family. Sharpay and Ryan from High School Musical. Troy and Gabriella didn't respect people's time, efforts, or even each other, and Troy folded the moment he was alone with his friends. They showed up late all the time. Sharpay and Ryan were just kids who knew what they wanted and worked their ass off for it. Since birth practically, they were such jerks to the composer, though. She wrote the show just for them to stomp all over her intentions, because they had more standing in the drama department. That kind of behavior in a professional setting would get them fired. Far Cry 4. Pagan Min was actually the good guy the entire time. Granted, he was an awful person, but best of a bad situation sort of thing. The two leaders of the Golden Path, whichever one you side with, ends up turning on you after you deal with Pagan. Whether they're forcing children and women to be slaves or soldiers, or just straight executing them. That's what the freedom fight comes to. AJ, the character you play as, is probably the only good person throughout the whole game, and you get the choice to become leader of Golden Path by killing either Sabal or the chick. I forget her name, but anyways, Pagan was honest to AJ the whole time. If you wait like he tells you at the start of the game, he comes back and you spread the ashes like your mother wanted you to. That's the proper ending of the game, and it takes 15 minutes. You avoid the civil war and being abducted entirely. I never kill Pagan now, because even though he had Mern killed, he had Ajay's best interest at heart. Ruthless leader, but he's better than actual terrorists. Magneto in X-Men. He always thought humans would try to destroy mutants, and he was right, because they tried. He might have been a bit extreme, but man, it's hard not to feel some sympathy for him after the shitty hand that life and humans dealt him early on. Mr. Wilson. I was a teen when the movie came out. I was infuriated when Martha had to go make sandwiches, when the steaks got paint all over them. F Dennis. I have a thing against Dennis parents. That kid's effed up and I blame them. Continuum is a sci-fi show where terrorists travel back in time from the near future to try and change history. The main character gets trapped in the past with them and has to try and prevent them from changing anything, except the future they are trying to change is one where society is ruled by a corporate congress. Humans' rights are basically out the window, and things are pretty F up from the get-go. You kind of want the bad guys to win. Walter Peck and Ghostbusters. The proton packs are unlicensed nuclear accelerators. This is explained to the audience by Ray. When the guys are at their first job, the Ghostbusters built everything themselves in what appears to be a short amount of time, with no regulations or inspections. It's perfectly reasonable and legal for the EPA to investigate the storage facility and the equipment. Answer by you invaders from a similar thread some years ago. Megatron. The Decepticons were formed due to political corruption and a completely broken caste system. Megatron and the original Decepticons, Shockwave and Soundwave, were essentially born into the lowest caste on Cybertron, the field workers miners. They were born into conditions where their only way to stay alive and not be murdered in the middle of the night was to fight in the gladiator pits, where it was kill or be killed. The rest of the Cybertronians, Transformers, were split into a middle caste and the rich caste. The middle caste were the basic workers, like construction workers, archivers, other low quality, tedious lives that they had no way out of. The rich caste controlled the entire government on Cybertron. These were the Primes. They share the title with Optimus Prime, but he was not one of them. They kept the lower classes underfoot, with no way of advancing their civilization whatsoever. The middle class was well off, for the most part, but the low caste that Megatron was in was disregarded completely, treated like trash. So then this gladiator named Megatron starts inspiring all those lower caste workers and telling them that they don't have to live this way. Megatron is the first person who gains traction, and with the help of an archiver in the middle caste named Optimus, not yet a Prime, begins to spread his ideas of freedom and being able to choose your life and what to do. At this point, the Decepticons are becoming a major threat to the higher caste. Rogue terrorist Decepticons begin performing terrorist attacks on various parts of Cybertron, even things like amusement parks, because yes, Transformers had those, and Megatron realizes just how much power that he has. Megatron and Optimus are given a hearing below the High Council to discuss fixing their society, because at this point, Megatron and Optimus are the head of a, mostly, peaceful revolution. The council does not think that Megatron has had any desire to cause destruction, just that his followers were becoming out of control. It was becoming a major issue, so it had to be addressed. At this hearing, the High Council of Primes addresses the clerk named Optimus for his efforts in trying to improve their society, and offer him the rank of Prime. He accepts, realizing that they may be able to fix their society without a full revolution. Megatron becomes enraged. His closest friend betrays him to join the very system he hated, and he absolutely loses it there. He signals his followers, who were among the audience in the chamber. At this point the uprising had been spreading throughout the whole planet, to bring down the building. Megatron, who had gone nearly power mad, swears to kill Optimus for betraying their ideals and friendship. The building collapses, killing most of the Primes. Optimus and a few others escape. Optimus Prime becomes the leader of the reforming society. Meanwhile, the Decepticons gain more and more power. Thus begins the power struggle between those who want to peacefully reform, Autobots, and those who want to scrap the entire system, killing anyone who opposes, Decepticons. The conflict continues until Cybertron is finally bled dry, and they must leave. The devastated remainder of their society, the Autobots, flee from the dying planet, but Megatron gives chase. They eventually wind up on Earth. Megatron was never evil. He felt rage because of the injustice of watching his kin die in the gladiator pits, and his closest friend betraying everything they had worked for and all of their ideals. He was eventually driven mad by power, brainwashing his loyal followers who believed what they were doing was right the whole time. Yes, Transformers has very deep lore. A shame that Bay doesn't try to include this rich lore and history that the series has. Also, this is what happens before G1, the 80s cartoon, if you're wondering. King Triton. He was trying to wrangle in his 16-year-old, who, as the youngest tend to do, had zero desire to listen to her dad. On that note, Ursula also understood how dumb Ariel was being for wanting to give up her voice for a dude, so she sang her an entire song about it, and catfished the prince to show Ariel his true colors. Edit. Guys, it's a fairy tale. Sure, it's not that serious. Also, per almost every Disney movie or Disney Channel original movie, any character keeping the protagonist from achieving their dreams and or happiness is a villain, which, according to Merriam-Webster, is any character opposing the hero. Also, keeping in mind who the target audience is, children, specifically little girls, King Triton is most definitely not considered a good guy for keeping his daughter from true love. Clover in Cloverfield. It's a baby giant monster that's trapped in a city and confused as F. Then it starts getting attacked from multiple angles by machine guns, tanks, and rockets, and is even carpet bombed. It just woke up. The farmer in Skyrim. There were victims. They were snow elves, driven underground by the Nords, who invaded their homeland, and they tried to be friendly with the dwarfs, who then blinded them and turned them into these violent creatures. Then some owl comes along, invades their cave, shouts fire at them, steals their shit and kills them. To be fair, they also kidnap and murder surface dwellers. Hades in mythology, most of the time seen as the bad guy, because he rules over the underworld, but he was sent there and he's just doing his job, maintain the souls inside, deliver punish when needed, etc. And Zeus is a horrible guy. Hades is one of the most mild gods, and there, when Hades came to realize how messed up the world was, now that he had accidentally caused winter to be a thing, he used his powers to safeguard all the seeds of the world beneath the earth during that season, so that they would be ready to bloom when his wife returned to her mother. Name one other Greek god that ever admitted to making a mistake and worked to correct it for the sake of humans. I know David from Shaun of the Dead wasn't really a villain per se, but he was completely right about Shaun's plan going to shit, which caused his, Diane's, and Ed's deaths. Also Pete. He was uni mates with Shaun, but Shaun never grew up, and Ed was a effing nightmare. Made a mess, didn't have a job, barely paid his keep, kept leaving the door open, not even just unlocked, all night. Couldn't even jot down answering machine messages for years. Hell, Pete even weighs up Ed in a conversation with Sean and says he can be funny, that they used to have a good time. He hasn't just written the bloke off, he's considering both sides. He doesn't even care. He's dealing or smoking weed, which if they're renting could put them in a tight spot. Pete got attacked in the street and just didn't even bring it up to them because he knew they didn't care, because they were self-absorbed. And then at 4 in the effing morning on Sunday, the same day he was attacked, they were blasting electro off their decks. Who wouldn't be angry? And he immediately gave them a pass because he felt bad about Sean and Liz. He only got shirty because Ed called him a prick as he was leaving. Was he condescending? Yes. Was he a prick? Probably. Was he right? In the words of Ed himself, F yeah. Sid from Toy Story. How the hell was he supposed to know that toys are secretly alive and can feel things? They toys never told him this or gave any indication that he was doing anything wrong. At the moment he becomes aware of it, he's horrified by it and presumably never hurts a toy again. What's more, he's not purely destructive. His destruction is creative. He performs play surgeries on the toys and rebuilds them once he's torn them apart. I understand how it might seem macabre, but this kid might have ended up being a mechanic or surgeon someday if the toys hadn't scarred him for life. Edit. A few people have noticed he's kind of mean to his little sister, but that feels pretty normal to me for a 10-year-old boy, and we know he has a pet dog that he's considerate towards. Remember how he brings Scud home, the little Pizza Planet squeaky toy? So I really do think that Sid is, deep down, a creative and compassionate child from a troubled home, who did absolutely nothing wrong and was unfairly cast as the villain, despite acting the way a normal 10-year-old acts. Incidentally, Scud, the dog, is also completely unfairly cast as a villain. Scud is a perfectly good dog to the humans in the family, and he chases the toys around because they're literally toys, and he's a dog. The bad guys in Bravely Default try to stop the 4 protagonists from completing their goal pretty much from the start of the game. At around 2/3 to 3/4 into the game, it turns out that they were trying to stop them because the protagonists had been tricked by an ally into actually doing the bad thing. So not only were the bad guys trying to actually save the world, the protagonists were actually the ones that almost ended the world in the first place. Don't kill me, but Skylar White absolutely despised her. The first time I watched, seethed seeing her on screen. Second watch, she was totally justified. I mean, her husband became a murderous meth dealer. That wouldn't stop at anything. She was supposed to just be cool with it. She had a newborn, and her husband was a crime lord. She sacrifices her own reputation by not talking about the separation, etc., even though it makes her seem like the bad guy, so that it doesn't hurt her kids or her brother-in-law. She's essentially held hostage by him. Sure, eventually she acquiesces to everything. Walt said it himself, it's not about money, it's not about his family anymore. He just wanted an empire. He liked it. Oddly enough, the rich dude trying to build a mall in the Hannah Montana movie comes to mind. Why did the writers expect a bunch of 5-12-year-old girls to hate malls? What would have been so wrong with building a mall? It wasn't like that Joni Mitchell song, where they'd take Paradise and put up a parking lot. It was a damn open field in a hick town where there was nothing to do. I'm not the biggest fan of capitalism, but people need jobs and shit. If anything, Hannah's the villain for writing that square dance song. The shark in Jaws. It's a shark. The ocean is its home, and where its species has thrived for millions of years. It's not the shark's fault. The Dumbus mayor insisted on keeping the beaches open and downplaying everything, resulting in more deaths. That iceberg in Titanic is just minding its own business when it gets knocked on the head by the sex raft.